Hey, friend, welcome to another episode of the podcast. We're grateful to have you joining us for a conversation on Luke 18. We're wrapping up chapter 18. So we're talking about Jesus predicting his death, and we're talking about the last healing in the Gospel of Luke before Jesus' death and resurrection. I don't think I mentioned that on Sunday. So
No,
this
that's
is
cool.
like the last miracle healing. And
And it's a good one.
it's a good one and
Yeah.
positioned really
Yeah.
intentionally. So we're going to get into all the good things. But if you were here on Sunday, if you watched the sermon, one of the main things that we want to tackle today is the idea of things being hidden inside of Scripture and all of what that means, because we touched on it a little bit
Yeah.
and didn't sort of have a chance to go deeper into what
Yeah.
that means throughout
Yeah.
Scripture. So I think that's going to govern like the bulk of our conversation today. But again, we hope that this helps you. In the first place, we do hope that this helps you draw closer to Jesus in your sort of your walk with God. Pray a little bit more. Think these things through for your own self. Is it challenging? Is it encouraging? What are you feeling as we're wrestling our way through the gospel? And I think especially then, to have a conversation with somebody else about it. So we really hope that this pushes you toward conversation.
Yeah.
So we're going to jump in. We've got some questions and
So just to give like a little bit of a backdrop here. So we got these two different stories that are kind of just contrasting, very, very clearly contrasting. You have the disciples. So Jesus predicts his death a third time with the most amount of specificity that we've seen thus far. And even there's a little mini contrast even with that like he gives the most detail possible, and the disciples are like, I don't get it, and then there's this kind of macro contrast between the disciples who are blind to what Jesus is saying and doing, and then to this literally blind man who sees who Jesus is, right? Doesn't call him out as Jesus of Nazareth, which is just sort of a generic term for like a Grant of Toronto
Anywhere,
or Montreal or
Yeah.
wherever, right? Justin of Guelph, like there are lots of Justins in Guelph and lots of Grants in Montreal, and so like he calls him though Jesus, son of David. There's a messianic nature to what he is calling toward Jesus for. And so he gets healed and he is able to see, but he saw who Jesus was before he could see. And meanwhile, the disciples are struggling to see who Jesus truly is, while they can see, right? So like, it's poetic in many ways. It's there's a lot to unpack there. But there is one piece in particular that I know that when we were, you and Allison and I were unpacking this passage, we're like, I don't like that. I don't like that. It's been nagging at us, and you alluded to it in the sermon. But it says in verse 34 of Luke 18, it says, the disciples did not understand any of this. That's nothing new. What is a bit unique is it says its meaning was hidden from them, and they did not know what he was talking about. So my mind went to a couple places. My mind went to thinking about, okay, is God intentionally doing this? Or are they just dum-dums that like just don't get it? And so it's like just stating a fact that the meaning of all this was just hidden from them because they were too stubborn or whatever, right? So like there's the question there, but also I think that there's another thing to explore across the scriptures about where things get hidden or not hidden, right? Yeah. So like my mind went to Pharaoh in Exodus, right? And how Pharaoh hardens his heart, and also God hardens his heart, kind of causing him to act or believe certain things or not, right? And it's this interesting dynamic that I'm like, okay, is it the disciples doing the thing, or is it not, right? So launching pad there just to kind of go wherever you feel like. So
yeah. So I think the first thing that I want to say is there's this really interesting parallel in these two stories, and you mentioned one of them. So I think this is maybe a helpful place to start, or at least I find an interesting place to start. So when the disciples are being described, when Luke writes that the disciples don't know what's going on. So we see there's kind of these like threefold way of like escalating their lack of understanding. So the disciples did not understand any of this. One, its meaning was hidden from them. Two, and they did not know what he was talking about. Three, so there's this like escalation of unknowing, even to use a word that doesn't exist, unknowingness, right? Like they don't know what's happening. They don't understand it. They don't see it. And Luke basically escalates that 3 times. One of those times is that its meaning was hidden from them. And one of the questions just naturally becomes, well, who does the hiding, right? Is it just hidden from them as in they can't see it? Like it's they just don't understand it. And a lot of people lean in that direction because of that threefold escalation, right? So Luke says, the disciples did not understand any of this. Well, so that sounds like it's on them.
Yes.
Its meaning was hidden from them. Oh, okay. Well, that maybe sounds like
Could be on God.
Could be on them, could be on God.
Yeah.
A combination of both. Yeah. They didn't know what he was talking about. Kind of sounds like it's back on them again.
Yeah.
But you get this threefold escalation. If you flip over to the blind beggar who receives his sight, there's also an escalation. And I want to tease this out because, again, not having enough time to do it on Sunday. Sermon was already too long, had communion, it was a longer service. But you get this blind man who's sitting at the gates of Jericho. And there's a whole question there about which Jericho are we at, and like it in the other Gospels, it's Jesus is entering Jericho here. In the other Gospels, he's exiting Jericho. So what's going on? But there's a whole like side plot about old Jericho and new Jericho in Jesus's day, and to get to new Jericho, you had to exit old Jericho, so you had to go in. Anyways, so it is very likely just different descriptions of the same event, right? In Jesus's day, they talked about old Jericho as Jericho and new Jericho as Jericho. So is he exiting Jericho or is he entering Jericho? Yes.
Very clear.
So yeah, more exactly, more. But if you continue reading, so blind man, he's sitting there. He heard the crowds going by. He asks, Jesus of Nazareth, they say, and then he calls out Jesus, son of David. He calls out a second time, son of David. And then we get this great, so Jesus stopped. And in English, it just skips. He's like, he stopped. He ordered the man to be brought to him. And when he came near, Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? But the implication and like you got to kind of put like your nerd hat on here for a second, but in the Greek is actually this, again, escalation of intentionality in drawing this guy in. So he calls out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stopped. And then a truer translation could even say he stopped. And moreover, he told the crowds to bring him to me. And moreover, when he came near, Jesus asked him. And then moreover, Jesus said to him, receive your sight. And so it's this, in my mind, like it kind of serves as this parallel escalation of, in many ways, Jesus drawing this guy in to what he already knows. He, and to use air quotes, he sees Jesus for who he really is. He's got this spiritual sight. But just like the disciples' lack of understanding is escalating through the passage, this blind man's understanding is escalating through the passage.
That's good.
With Jesus's invitation, because it's like, moreover, he stopped, and even more, he told him to be brought to him, and even more, he said to him, what do you want me to do for you? So we've got these, like, it's almost like, I picture in my mind, like, and this is a bad analogy, but like one elevator, you get 2 elevators side by side in glass tubes, and like one elevator is going down, one elevator is going up at the same time, at the same speed, and they're just headed in different directions. You get the disciples who seem to be falling more and more into this unknowing, and this blind man who is drawn by Jesus into more and more awareness of who Jesus actually is. So that kind of frames out the whole thing. Now, the thing that I said on Sunday, which might be a helpful place to turn to, is that the one story is very intentionally positioned here to comment on the other.
Yes.
So, and again, whether you as a reader of Scripture think that Luke is doing this intentionally and he's taking two stories that might not have happened back to back and putting them together, or whether they did happen back to back and Luke is just accounting for them as back to like, that doesn't matter.
No.
What matters is that this is what we have and one comments on the other. So just like the disciples are kind of descending into their unknowingness and this blind beggar is ascending into greater awareness and knowledge of who God is, that invitation that Jesus gives, that threefold, and moreover, he draws him in, and moreover, he asks him, is serves as a like a foretaste or a promise to the disciples of where they will be led.
Yeah.
So even in their uncertainty, even in their hiddenness, even in their unknowing, Jesus immediately gives them this beautiful sign of what is to come for them, which is that there will be a day where they fully understand and know the things that are currently hidden from them, be it because of their own, their own intellect or expectation, which was what we talked about on Sunday, their own expectation of Jesus, or be it because of divine hiddenness or like God hiding the thing from them. So I think a helpful place to start is not out of this place of like fear and, I think it's honest to say, oh, I don't love that this is here. Like, does God hide this from them? Yeah, I don't love that. That's an honest thing to say. But I think it's helpful to frame these two stories out as a promise. This is like foreshadowing what will happen to the disciples. So they're not going to be left in this state forever. And that just helps, I think, change our conversation around what hiddenness is in Scripture before you go down kind of the rabbit hole of the instances of what is being hidden, who is hidden in Scripture, what does it mean? Because it's not morally neutral. That's the thing. Like when things are hidden in Scripture, it's not morally neutral. It's not, it is ambiguous a little bit sometimes, but it's not, the fact that it is saying something specific about the people and the situation, the context, like that, that is not ambiguous. When things are hidden, they're hidden for a reason, they're hidden for a purpose. And so I just hope for people not to start at this place of fear, like, maybe stuff's hidden from me, and will I ever find out? The word to the disciples in this is very clearly, there will be a day where you do find out. So things won't be hidden from you in perpetuity, forever, to your demise. It's really, and we're going to get into this, but it's for their own good. It's for their own, the way in which we talk about the divine hiddenness is so often for their own good in the end. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's a helpful way to frame it. There's still part of me that doesn't like it. And that's just there's this part of me that's like, it doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem like why, if it is God, and I think that it's still a question, if it is God that is doing the hiding, that feels like, okay, well, yeah, like what else is God hiding from me? What else is God holding out on me for? I'm like, these are like genuine questions. I remember like I went through a phase in my own life where like I had a lot of friends who were like leaning into like Reformed theology, and particularly more, I would say like they were in this like stage of life where it was like they really wanted to be like hardcore like Calvinists.
Yeah.
And if that means nothing to you, don't worry about it. But like it was, and so they really, really leaned into the like themes of predestination, and limited atonement and things like that. And again, if that means nothing to you, maybe go down a rabbit trail. It's fun. But I had like deep existential crises about some of these things. Yeah. And so my hackles get up when I am like, there's like this part of me, and part of that I've learned to be okay with it over the years. I've learned to like accept some of the mystery of God. So like, when I'm reading passages like this, when I'm reading passages like say like Ephesians 1, where I'm reading them and I'm like, okay, I don't know the full mind of God and the full scope of God and why God might hide something from the disciples,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And there is something of a mercy, you know, and maybe think that's something I could compare it to. I don't know if this works or not, but like, I'm thinking about like, you know, my child, as a 10-year-old, she's 10. There are things that I don't tell her, that one day I will tell her, right? There are things about life. There are things about, even like church and theology and the Bible that like, hey, she's only 10. Her mind can't hold all these, like all the nuance and all of the tensions and all of the things together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Her brain is not fully developed and won't be for another almost 15 years, you know? Like, and so I think like the way that I can come to terms with it is like, it's a mercy in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do think that's a helpful way to frame it because like that, we do that all the time and we think that it's okay and good and even right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's also okay to just name the fact that we don't like that God might be hiding something from us because now it's us, like it's me who's implicated. Just
Right.
like put yourself in your kid's shoes. Like your kid doesn't like the fact that you don't tell them everything.
Yeah.
I think it's hard. Sometimes we read things in scripture and the hardest thing is going, okay, that's there. I don't like it.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Uh-huh.
And I've got to at least find a way to say, okay, it's there. What is the invitation to me?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would encourage people to say, like, when you're reading scripture, that's the best, I think, frame of mind that you can be in is what is the invitation? What is the invitation? So let's talk through a lot of the reasons or some of the reasons why. Okay, some of the instances of things being hidden in scripture throughout, because like I said, so it's not morally neutral. It happens all throughout scripture. It's an Old Testament and New Testament phenomenon. There's language for it in Hebrew. There's language for it in Greek, and it starts at the very, very beginning. So you get Adam and Eve who hide from God in the garden. So hidden. They are attempting to be hidden from God, which is impossible.
Yeah.
But from the very beginning, we get this relationship dynamic of hiddenness. Don't eat from the tree. There is an implied hiddenness there. And there is an implied trust at the beginning, and then the deceiver comes in, right? So Satan, the accuser, comes in and says, "Did God really say that? Like, did He really say? Like, can you really trust?" And I think that, like, not to push too hard against you not liking that this is in the passage. We all have things that we don't like in the passage.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it's honest and good and right to name that we don't like it. The wrong step to take then is to say, well, does it really say it though? Does it really say the thing that I don't like?
Right.
Yeah, it does. It still does. Even if we don't like it, it still says the thing.
And like sometimes there could be, like nuance to translations that like, leave certain things open to interpretation. I don't get that impression here though.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
But I just think it's helpful also to name that this challenge, this wrestling starts at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And so from the very beginning, human beings have to wrestle out their relationship with God, which if you take it at face value is an unequal relationship. Creator, creation, right? God and humanity we're not equal.
Yeah.
And so I do think that your child-parent analogy is just a really simple, helpful way to think about that. You are not, it is not a relationship of equals.
Yeah.
When you are taking care of your kid and making sure they're staying alive.
Sometimes they try to make it.
Yep.
But it's
so we see it from the very beginning, Adam and Eve. We see it in Israel's spiritual blindness. So in passages like Isaiah 9 or 6:9, I think it is. Sorry, Isaiah 6:9, which is hearing, you will hear and not understand. So again, like this implied hiddenness that you will not understand. There's also the religious leaders that Jesus talks to in the New Testament who continually don't understand and recognize what Jesus is saying and the implication for them. And I think about his constant battles with the Pharisees about the right reading of law and application of law, and Jesus saying things like, "You have heard it said, but I say to you." So he has this constant sort of undertone of conflict with the religious leaders running through. So some of the reasons why, though, things are hidden, and I wrote a few down just to be helpful, which I very rarely do for podcast episodes, but I'm trying to be organized here.
It's good.
So one, divine initiative. These are the places in Scripture where God is doing the hiding of the thing. Mm-hmm. So this is hidden revelation. This is moments, in some ways like what we've just seen in Luke, where the disciples 3 times in a row, Jesus has said to them, this is what is going to happen. And it's hidden from them. They don't understand. But one of the key verses here is Matthew, in Matthew 11:25. So the idea being that there are occasions where God, this is Jesus, is speaking in a way that hides things from human beings to cultivate humility in the human being, and as an acknowledgement of divine sovereignty. Mm-hmm. So again, we're establishing a relationship that is unequal. So this is God's sovereignty, this is divine sovereignty, and human humility, mm-hmm. our humility. So in Matthew 11, you've hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Mm. So we talk about this with parables all the time, that Jesus spoke in a way that was, I use this word carefully, but like cryptic. Like mm-hmm. parables are not straightforward teaching. They are meant to communicate truths when the listener leans in mm-hmm. and actively participates and works at understanding. Like Jesus teaches, and his desire is that you lean in and that you want to participate in the thing. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, well then, you're probably not going to understand what he's saying. Mm-hmm. So there's divine initiative there. Like there's initiative on God's side, on Jesus's side with the way he's teaching. But I think you also have to acknowledge that there's human response to that divine initiative. It's not just that God has hidden that from me, and I guess I'm one of the ones it's hidden from because I don't know what he's talking about. No, he's inviting you to lean in and to want to learn and grow and be challenged and find this place of humility, which says, I need to learn and grow and be challenged. So Jesus does this all the way through. And again, it's in one of Jesus's prayers, I think. So Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. God veils kingdom mysteries, kingdom realities. I do think that there's this invitation to lean in and from a place of humility, or a starting place, I guess, of humility, be ready for God to do some work changing your heart and your mind. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen if you start from a place of certainty where you know everything that God has said, or everything that the scriptures contain, or everything that you think is correct. There's no transformation that's going to happen from a place of certainty.
Reminds me of I just put up 1 Corinthians 1 where Paul's kind of tracking with a similar idea, where he's like, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. So they're not going to get it. They're not going to understand it. The meaning is obscured from them. Yep. But to those of us who are being saved, who have humbled themselves before God, yep. It is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Like there's you see that even there. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other verse that I had written down is Colossians 1:26. And that just says, how does that begin? So the mystery that has been kept hidden for ages and generations, but is now disclosed to the Lord's people, right? You also get Matthew 13:35, and I know that we're jumping around here, so apologies. But in Matthew 13:35, it says, so is fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. So there's this desire, I think, that for followers of Jesus, for people, for humanity, to understand, or to at least grasp eventually, the idea that our understanding, our transformation that happens, our knowledge, the things that we have received, have learned from Jesus, rests on grace and love and mercy and kindness, not on aptitude or intellect. It's not about just figuring out the mystery. So the Christian life is not, and this is not in my notes, so this could go sideways. But so the Christian life is not. Have you ever done one of these like was it like lock rooms, escape rooms?
I have not. My daughter did one for her birthday party.
The whole idea, anyways.
It's terrifying.
So locked in a room, and there's a whole bunch of clues. And if you string together the right clues in the right way, then you can escape from the escape room.
Yeah.
And you get the key. Eventually you get the key. At least this is what I've heard. I don't know. Has anybody done? Okay. A couple people have done escape rooms. This is a thing. And like so I think that our default is to think, oh, if God's hidden something from us, it's kind of like an escape room. It's a divine escape room where we have to work to like solve the mystery and prove that we're smart enough. This is why, like, I don't want to go to escape room. I don't want to confront the fact that I'm an idiot and I can't get my way out. Like, I can't find the key. Like, I just don't want to do it. So we have this baseline assumption that when things are hidden, like, okay, I need to work and prove my intellect and aptitude in order to uncover the mystery and escape the escape room that is, this Christian life. Things are hidden to, I believe, and I think Scripture is clear, to do the exact opposite, which is to show that it's all grace. All of it rests on grace. And the moment, so Jesus wants you to lean in and to be an active participant in understanding the parable. What does that look like? It looks like humility. It looks like confronting the things inside of yourself. It doesn't look like an escape room where you're like, okay, we solved this clue, now we solve this clue, now we solve this clue, and then suddenly like, bing, like the key's gonna pop out of a wall or from behind a painting, and away you go. So things are hidden, divine initiative, hidden revelation. It is meant to point us toward grace and what Jesus is doing. So that's number one. Number two, second reason, is human blindness. And this, I think, we see a mixture of in the disciples. So this is what we've talked about, which is that the disciples don't get it. And if it just said that it was hidden from them, period.
That'd be more difficult.
That would be, I think we'd be tipping one, right?
Yeah.
Divine initiative only. But the fact that Luke says the disciples did not understand any of this, then its meaning was hidden from them. They did not know what he was talking about. I think to me implies that there are multiple things going on here. And so we do see this, that when people reject Jesus and reject what he is saying, that leads to further hiddenness and further concealment, or at least further unknowing, further confusion. So again, I do think that we've got to see this in the disciples. So 3 times the disciples are told of the cross, and its message, its understanding was hidden from them. Now, I think it's hidden from them because they don't want to accept what Jesus is saying. They do not want to accept that Jesus has to go and die, and that everything they've thought about who the Messiah would be is wrong. So they're not willing to confront that in themselves. It has less to do with what Jesus is saying and more to do with what's going on in their own mind and their own heart.
They're just in their own feelings, They're just kind of stuck there.
Yeah. Now, what some commentators and some writers wonder in this, and I like it, is that in part the hiddenness is a grace to the disciples. Because they don't want to accept that Jesus has to die, right? So Peter says it, right? Like, surely not. He's like, you will never do this. And what does Jesus respond to him? Get behind me, Satan. So that's a harsh line. It is a grace, because if they fully understood, if it was not hidden from them, and they refused to follow Jesus to that point, that's a very different story. And
so
so
you made an anxious mess, all of them. Yeah.
at best.
At best, yeah.
So the hiddenness, and I hope this is tracking for people, the hiddenness serves as a grace to the disciples because it delays accountability. They're still wrestling it out. They're still like, we don't like this. We don't want it.
Yeah.
This is not going to happen. And the final word that Jesus speaks to Peter is not "get behind me, Satan." It's "go feed my sheep." So it allows for the disciples to be prepared for what is really true and going to happen without the necessity of judgment or accountability in the moment. They can wrestle out their doubt. And that's why I love, so the quote that I started with on Sunday was that in order to be a person of faith, you have to become a person of doubt, or you have to wrestle with doubt is such a beautiful thing because in some ways, the hiddenness allows you the space for doubt, and the mystery allows you the space for doubt. And it's doubt without judgment, or at very least, it's doubt without judgment toward condemnation. Yeah. It allows for grace, and it allows for mercy, and it delays accountability so that you can wrestle it out on the way with Jesus as you follow him to Jerusalem. And it allows for more time for God to transform your life, your heart, your mind, and for you to respond. So it's like a divine mercy that things might also be hidden. Okay, last thing I want to say, because I could go on for a long time with all this. Jesus himself represents this hiddenness, this like paradoxical hiddenness, because all through his ministry and all through his life, people are trying to figure out who he is. So he's got this great interaction with the disciples where they're walking by, they're walking by this it's actually a spring. So where water would come, where drinking water would well up out of the ground, and where people for generations came to gather drinking water. And so, as you would assume, many different people, many different communities would gather, would find literally the source of life, water, drink it, and then build these idols and icons to gods. They build altars, they carve out images of various gods. And so Caesarea Philippi is the location of this place. And so Jesus is walking with his disciples, and he asks them this question: who do people say that I am? And some of his disciples, they go, well, some say you're Elijah, some say prophet, and Jesus doubles down. He says, well, who do you say that I am? And they say, you are the Messiah. And it's this process of gradual like revelation. The disciples eventually get to a place where they name him as Messiah. Now, still, their expectations are sideways.
Yes.
But the disciples don't begin, like when Jesus calls them, they don't, hey, that's the Messiah, we're going to follow him. They think he's a rabbi. And so they follow him. And eventually they figure it out. But the whole of the area, and everybody's trying to figure out who Jesus is. You see it all the way through to Jesus's trials, where like some say you're the king of the Jews, and who are you going to say that you are? And Jesus remains silent, keeps it hidden. But he himself is this paradox of speaking very boldly about what is to come, while also remaining somewhat of a mystery to people. People don't know,
and intentionally
who he is. Intentionally,
yeah,
because that's the question that every single one of us has to wrestle with, which is, who is Jesus? Who is Jesus? Because that changes my life, and that changes your life, and listener, that changes your life when you wrestle out the question. I think every human being that has ever existed and will ever exist needs to reckon with that question: who is Jesus? Because if he is who he says he is, then it's game on. And if he isn't, then none of it matters. And you, listener, me, we all need to be confronted with that question. And I think that's in part what happens when it is this gradual revelation through Scripture of who Jesus is, and this gradual unfolding of, I would say that not from full mystery to full certainty, but from mystery to certainty, like along that trajectory of being able to declare who Jesus is. I think that every single person needs to answer that question: who do you say that I am? So like Christological implications as well. We see it all the way through, that there's this back and forth of hiddenness and understanding, not knowing, discovering, being known. And that's what Paul alludes to when he says, listen, now I know partially, but then I will know fully as I am fully known. And it's this great promise of what is to come.
And yeah, and there are things that we even today, and like looking at the full canon of scripture, and have, like theologians have not finished plumbing the depths of all that is there. And even if they did, it still would not, contain the totality of all that we could possibly know about God and the universe and Jesus. And those are questions we'll have, hopefully, some good conversations with God in heaven.
Yep, absolutely.
I had lots of other thoughts and questions, but it felt like that was like the right place to, to end, and the grappling with who Jesus is. Yep. And so we hope that whether you've been a follower of Jesus for decades or whether this is newer for you, that we are still in a process of asking those questions. Who is Jesus? And living out the implications of that answer. So good place to end.
Yep.
Have a great week. We hope you'll join us next week as we get into a little bit of a fun story about Zacchaeus, a little bit of a Sunday school story that you often hear, but we're going to hopefully go a little deeper than Sunday school.
Yep.
Have a great week.